Hello aspirants, good morning to you all. So today we are going to see the next session of our one day one answer series, and today the theme will be the national movement. This theme is very important and it's a recurring theme in the UPSC mains examination for GS paper 1 in the history section. While I was analyzing the paper PYQs from last 10 to 12 years, the questions on the national movement have basically came on two important themes within the national movement, and that was one, the Gandhian era, the movement in which Gandhi had participated. It was based on the outcome and approach of Gandhian movement, and second one was the different phases of national movement. Friends, we all know that national movement in India has started from the founding of the INC as a political organization in 1885. Now from the 1885 to 1947 till we get the independence, these years are known as the phases of national movement or the years of national movement. In this phase, three important division has been done. The first is from the 1885 to 1905, that is the phase of moderates. Then from 1905 to 1917, that is the phase before coming of the Gandhi. In this phase from 1905 to 1907, the phase was dominated by again moderates and extremists both, but the national movement was not in a concrete shape. It was at times been divided into ranks. It was at times not sure about the strategies to be followed, and it was at times, for example, being inspired by some world events like world wars and the Home Rule League of Irish. So these were the years which was happening at that time, and in this time the national movement was not having a concrete shape, and it was yet to decide on its particular course. What will be our course? From 1917 onwards, because before the years we all know about the Gadar movement, about the Home Rule League, okay, the various proposals of moderates, the friction between moderates and extremists. So in 1917, one very important phase came with the arrival of Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi, having his history in South Africa, where he experimented with the satyagraha and the non-violence as a method to mend the ways of British government. Similar ways he has adopted into India. The first experiment was Champaran Satyagraha, the first non-cooperation. It was a very good movement. It was having the inspiration for the national movement also, and it helped the causes of peasant, because Champaran was for the peasant causes. So it helped the peasant, the cause of peasant, to join the national movement, and making it, it made the peasant and workers' cause aligned with the national movement. Now the shape and the course of national movement will be changed. Okay, so these years from 1917 till the 47 is called the Gandhian era in the national movement. We are going to see the PYQ, we'll go to see the structure of that PYQ in terms of answering that PYQ, and therefore we will have an elaborate discussion on the phases of national movement. In brief, I will tell you that what would be the components of your answer. But before going to the answer to the question, first we need to understand how you will read the national movement as a concept. So first of all, the national movement, as I told you, will be divided into three phases. Each phase is having its own importance, because UPSC is asking a kind of analytical application based mains question. So for that matter, to if you are able to solve such question, you need to have the clarity over different phases and what were the chief features of those phases. Then under the phase of national movement, what were the events which dominated in that phase and what were the outcomes of that. For example, from 1885 to 1905, the phase 1 of national movement, of course, it was having the chief feature and events concerned with the moderates. The particular themes under it will be the achievement of moderates. We have seen in the previous classes the achievement of moderates, the limitations of moderates, what were their limitations, then the outcome of that phase 1 of national movement. Therefore, next phase we are going to see from 1905 to 1917. The chief feature would be the coming up of the extremist phase. there was a rise of some militant nationalism, Avinav Bharat, Yugantar, etc. Extremist phase. Then of course in that phase you will see the Home Rule League. Then there was outside support for the Indian cause with regard to the coming up of the Gadar movement. So the message of Indian cause, the cause of India's independence spread wide and far. There was an intellectual revolution into the national movement. Now mass was getting aware for the need of the national movement. If we are under the colonial rule, we need to get over that. Then in this phase, it was in terms of outcome, it was dominated by two important things. First was the 1909 Act, Councils Act. The Councils Act, we all know, created the communal electorate, increased the seats to appease the moderate section. It tried to divide and rule. And thereafter in 1917 there was a Montego Declaration which talks about the aim of British government to make gradual self-government, not the home government, the gradual self-government for Indians. Then the 1919 Act which came out of that statement. So these were the chief features and outcome of that in the phase, in these two phases. Okay. Now the phase number 3, if we talk about the phase number 3 from 1917 onwards, it will be dominated by the Gandhiji. Gandhiji has came to the scene and the national movement has acquired a new shape, and in that shape two important events occur. First was, it was a Gandhian phase, and the second was the new strands were being joined in the national movement. In terms of Gandhian phase, the non-cooperation movement, okay, the Dandi March, the CDM, Civil Disobedience Movement, okay, etc., will be dominated by the programs, constructive programs of INC to make the national movement more inclusive will be there. Now in the new strands you will find that the decade of 1920s mein, there was a new strands coming into the strands, mean new themes, new participation, new voices were coming into the national movement, and these voices were basically dominated by the ideologies. So first ideologies which was a result of the communal electorate and divide and rule policy of British was the rise of communal politics. Communal politics. This was the chief feature in the national movement. The voices were being raised for the interest-based political participation, be it Muslim League, Hindu Mahasabha, etc. Okay. Then communist ideology. Communist ideology. Then third, connected with its socialist ideology. Socialist ideology. Number fourth, causes of depressed classes, the so-called untouchables, backward classes, the voices for their participation, and what would the independence will mean for these classes was being developed in the decade of 1920s, and that is our question of PYQs which we have taken. Okay, so socialist and communist voice, these two voices were inspired by the world event. In the 1917 there was a Russian revolution and the Bolsheviks won and it was the first communist government in the world to be established. This has inspired the communist ideology, class struggle. Socialism has got inspiration from that, having origin in the industrial movement times. It has both matured, both ideologies matured, and it has integrated into the ideology of INC. For example, Nehru, Subhas Bose, Bhagat Singh, etc. were the people who were championing the cause of communist ideology and socialist ideology. And national movement has acquired these ideologies under the programs and policies of INC. That was the phase of 1920s in terms of the events and outcomes. Okay. Then the cause of depressed classes. Ambedkar, Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar was the leader of the cause of the depressed classes, and based on that, coming up of the voice of depressed classes to make that more inclusive, INC has adopted the same constructive program. Gandhiji, if you remember the chapters on Gandhiji, you will find that Gandhi started the Harijan Sevak Sangh. newspaper Harijan. Gandhi ji has asked for a constructive program which aims to uplift the status position of women and untouchables in the society. He has called the congressman to work to remove the untouchability, to work for the social reforms. The reason being, he wanted to make the INC inclusive. He wanted to make the nationalist program in the INC an inclusive one and all India one. That is the various events and outcomes you will find in this phase of 1920s, and based on that we have taken that PYQ. I hope this point is clear to you. What are the various phases of national movement and how it acquired the new. So coming on to the question of PYQ, we have the question was asked in the year 2020 and the question is on the same theme. The theme is, since the decade of 1920s, just we had discussed that decade, the national movement has acquired the various ideological strands and thereby expanded its social base. Discuss. Now going to see the meaning of this question. The question says, it's a statement, and a statement means that since the decade 1920s, 20th decade ke time mein, the national movement has acquired various ideological strands, as we have just discussed, communist, socialist, depressed classes, and thereby after getting that various ideological strands, it thereby expanded its social base. That means the social base, samajik jo base tha uska jiske liye movement chal raha tha, that has expanded. There was an expansion in the social base of the INC and the national movement. Discuss. Discuss means you have to explain or elaborate on the various ideological strands and how it had expanded the social base. Okay? So what we need to discuss? The various ideological strands, what were they and how they had, in that elaboration you have to discuss that how they had expanded the social base of national movement. So national movement is not being confined to few bourgeois classes, few elite classes, but the national movement mean the movement for the upliftment of India's political and social status, comprising of all the political and social classes. Okay. So in that discussion, first you will give the introduction, general introduction of the decade of 1920s and the national movement and how Gandhian movement has came into that picture. Then in terms of discussion, you have to focus on two very important things. You will first discuss the various Gandhian movement in terms of the non-cooperation movement, 1920s, then the Swarajist and the responsivist, no changes, pro changes. Just give a hint of that and the outcomes of that national movement in terms of Gandhian movement, like NCM and CDM. In terms of the outcome and events, you have to explain that how the non-cooperation movement with its non-violence as its essence and the civil disobedience movement as a non-violence and satyagraha as its essence has expanded the social base in terms of giving the clear cut message to the British government of non-cooperation, because Gandhiji was of view that British has colonized India not because we are weak, not because that they are strong, but we are weak. So to remove that weakness and to remove that cooperation, we have to be non-cooperative. Now this, due to the nature of the movement as non-violence and satyagraha, the various classes going to participate. For example, women has came out of the home to participate in the movement. Student, elite persons, educated classes, middle class, they all have came to participate in the national movement, getting forward the message of the freedom struggle. First outcome, as it has been the social base, हमने यहाँ clear कर दिया. Then we are going to see that new strands, communal unity was seen in the national movement. Communal unity, Hindu-Muslim ekta, Khilafat non-cooperation. Then in the civil CDM movement also. Then there was a rise of Khudai Khidmatgar, the frontier Gandhi. So this was the movement. Due to the Gandhian movements, its outcome was expanding the social base and communal unity, the mass participation, which was absent in the previous years of 1905 decade. Then we have revolutionary movement as the next point. Revolutionary movement, HRA, HSRA, Hindustan Republican Association, then the Hindustan Socialist Republican Association by Bhagat Singh, and this has inspired the generations by the sacrifices, that by the martyrdom. उनके शहीद होने से उनकी चिताओं पे जो ज्वाला उठी थी वो पूरे राष्ट्र में फैली थी और उसने बहुत सारे युवकों को प्रेरित किया था. ये बहुत बड़ा कंट्रीब्यूशन था आपका रिवॉल्यूशनरी मूवमेंट्स का. It has given a new message that we cannot be passive, we can also be violent if you repress us. So this violence, though was condemned by Gandhiji, but it was definitely an ideological strength, revolutionary as an ideological strength, and it has expanded the social base. Then rise of socialist and communist ideologies and left 1920s के decade में देखते हैं हम लोग. Left 1925 CPI movement in India, M.N. Roy. This has given a new shape that what would be the meaning of freedom for us. Will it be meaning the new, just the changing of the color of the rulers, or will it be more meaningful with respect to the position of depressed classes, with respect to the position of social base, how it will impact, how the freedom will be meaning for the farmers, the agriculturists, the workers, industrialists, the middle class, उनके लिए क्या मतलब freedom का, ये इस time में बात की गई थी. This has of course was a new ideological strength. You have to discuss that ideological underpinnings and how it expanded the social base. It has expanded the social base by taking into the cognizance the outcome of freedom for these classes. So communist ideologies was on the rise, then Ambedkar and cause of depressed classes. Okay, untouchability will not go hand in hand if we get the freedom. Freedom means complete freedom, and the social base was made more stronger by the active participation of all the class into the national movement, and the outcome was seen in the Indian Constitution by abolishment of untouchability and giving the fundamental rights, equality to all. So this will be the discussion. It will be focusing on the prime aspects of national movement and what were the ideological strength, explain that ideological strength and how it impacted the social base, how it expanded the social base. Then the conclusion that it has brought the inclusiveness into the national movement and expanding the social base. It was meaning for that the freedom will not be confined only to a few, but it will be meaning that the freedom means the freedom for all from the inequality, from the repression, active participation. Okay, so different methods were found thereon. So it has diversified the composition of national movement by bringing in peasant, women, educated middle class, lower class, and gave a new life, vigor, momentum to the Indian struggle for freedom. And the decade marked the transformation of the movement into the mass movement. So I hope this point is clear to you. So in the pinned section, in the pinned comment section, the first comment will be the question on which you have to write the answer and submit the answer before 7 p.m. on the Telegram channel. We'll discuss the answer with you, and I hope you have got something to learn today. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much.